Well, welcome back from spring break. Boy, that's a dead silence. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing in my class. It's probably a bad thing. All right, we're going to talk about JavaScript, and we're going to talk about, which is kind of redundant since this is a JavaScript class, right? We're going to talk about forms, how to manipulate them, validate them, how to do selection lists, and how to validate submitted data. This is an essential part of securing websites. I'm going to say it again. It's an essential part to securing websites. If you validate the information that they're pulling in, you can prevent SQL injection attacks, Stack Overflow attacks. Okay? How many websites do you know that use web forms, Jose? Just say all of them.
All of them.
Because pretty much all, they have some comment forms. You know, those are web forms. Well, web forms basically, all they do is just gather information, either put it into a database, use it to send an email to some person for contact information, please contact us, you know, things like that. There are different ways you can do it. You can do it with PGI, or PHP, which we're going to talk a little bit later on, learning how to do PHP scripting. CGI scripting, or Common Gateway Interference. You can do ASP, which is if you're going to do it on an IIS server, Windows-based server, you want to do it with ASP because it merges a lot better. Or you can do Java server pages, which I would not suggest to do. Okay. For example, why not? Security vulnerabilities. Twitter forum sign-up page, right? Everyone's seen these, Facebook sign-ups, whatever. You're going to have to put in your full name, your username, password, email. You know, if you go into your bank account, you got to do the same thing, right? If you're using online banking. Web form information. Google Advanced Search has web form information, but where does this information go after you click submit, right? Doesn't go?
No, where does it go?
Where does it go? It goes into cyberspace, right? No, I'm being sarcastic. In this, what happened from that advanced search, he was searching for Dan Gosselin, okay? And he was looking for, I guess, 10 results in any language, in any format. And so, I can't even see that. Dan Gosselin with an edu site, okay? So it comes up with these 5 or 6 sites here, which you could have just typed in Dan Gosselin and then site, whatever. How many of y'all know about the booleans that you can do here on the Google search? There's a lot of things you can do. Easy to find people that way. Easy to do a lot of forensics analysis that way. I mean, not for penetration analysis. Because it's all based on a form. Now, when we're talking about forms, we're talking about form tag, okay, or the form element. As it's described, you have your open and closed greater than, less than symbols with form in it, right? Pretty simple. When you close it out, you can have the backslash form. Just remember, there are very few tags that you don't close out. When you close them out, there's always backslash before it. Now, I know the W3C changed it to where you can do your closing after the word in the closing tag, but or on like break lines and paragraphs and stuff. I like doing it the simple way because it tells me that I'm done with that form. You know, I'm done with whatever. Done with whatever. Or in y'all's case, done with whatever. Done with whatever. Well, forms can do a lot of things. We can send data to an email address specific, like we were talking about comments. Because if you have a mom and pop shop, like one of the clients that I have is a photographer. Well, literally they're a mom and pop shop. They have their studio in their house. Okay? They don't have a rack mount server. They don't have a T1 line coming into the house. I mean, they're running on Cox cable. All right? They have 2 computers, not even server related. Okay? When I created their website and I created their form, I had the form auto-generate an email to them when the user clicks submit. and I can show you all that script next week. Someone email me and remind me, and I'll bring in that script. All we have to do is tell in the form what the action is going to be. The action is, am I putting something into something, such as a database, or am I going to get something? Those are the two actions that you can have. All right? In order to do a to email someone, you have to have who you're mailing it to. So you use the append of the mail to action, or put the mail to on the action attribute, and then underneath there you can assign a to, a CC, the blind courtesy copy, the subject, attachments, files, memos. If you want someone to upload a picture or whatever, you can do that. But you have to give them an ID name as well for each one of the fields. Pretty simple to do.
On the mail to thing?
No. That's the attribute of the action.
Right.
Not just the a hyperreference mail to tag.
But when you use that, do you have to specify an SMTP server somewhere for that to go?
Right. When you're doing the action, the way I do them normally, I'm just teaching with what we've got here. But when I teach, what I do is I actually will send it to another ASP page. I like coding in ASP. Then I will have that ASP page construct the information that it gets. Basically, I have my web form. Every field in there has an ID. So all I do is I pull in those IDs over to this next page that I've created that processes all this to form the email script. Then that is kicked up to a third page which actually sends it out through the SMTP, through PHP script. Does that make sense? And that's how I do it. It's a 3-step process, but it's a lot cleaner because you can manipulate anything you want on there. And so if you add another field, then you add it here, and you add it here, and you're done. Because all the other one does is take this script and shoot it out. And then you can make it into loops where it continues to loop it until whenever. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with it. So if you're spamming someone, the script that I do works great. And then you can actually spoof it to where you can say that it comes from, Ken Dewey at rose.edu, and send it out to everyone, and then he gets all these return emails from everybody, and it's kind of funny. Maybe I ought to do it. I haven't done it to him, no. No, don't make me mad because all I got to do is get your email address. And then you get flooded with all these reply tos, and you're like, where did this header come from? But then I do it from I send it through like Gmail or Gorilla Mail or something like that, and spoof it and change everything, and it's kind of hard to find me at that point. But it's fun. The method is where you're going to get your get and post. Remember, I can get information or I can post information. So how many times do you hear that the system posted back information to you? You've done a web form, you click submit, and it comes back up and it gives you your data that you just submitted on just a blank page. It doesn't have the form or anything, and just shows you. That's posting back that data to you. Does it make sense? All right. The primary elements that you're going to have within a form is going to be your input, your button, select, and text area. Input, that's basically a 255 character string. That's it. That's all you get. A button is a radio button, on or off. Once you click it, it's on, kind of thing. Select element gives you a drop down to where you can select from a multiple list. And then inside that select, you can actually say default and default one to it. So you can say, I want this to auto show or be my default one so that you don't have that blank bar that comes in with a little down arrow. Like a lot of on the states, they'll show AZ or AK for Alaska first. text area, that is going to be a field that you can make it as big as you want. That's a memo field. So if you're putting that into a database, it would be the memo type. You can have as much area as you want. You go by columns and by rows on this. So you specify how big that text area, text box is going to be. All right. Form elements that you can put information into are going to be your input, text area, and select fields. That's where they can actually type information into. Select, when you type it in, will actually just go down the list to select it. So you can type AZ and then find AZ. Does that make sense? For example, here we have a input type of text, which means this is just going to be a simple text, 255 character long text. Our name of our identifier is going to be company_info. So anytime, hang on for a second, anytime I'm trying to find, if I'm going to call this to some other part of my program or web page, I'm going to call company info. It'll be used as identify company info. Does that make sense? The value of Skyward Flyers is what is automatically placed inside that text area. So when you get pre-filled text areas, like when you see when you're doing your birthday and it says mm/dd/yyyy and it's just sitting in there, all they did is mm/dd/yyyy right here. Or they usually put dashes because they put the. This is what I was talking about, like doing that closing tag here. I think it's ridiculous. It's not required and not needed. So you don't have to do that. Yes, Trevor.
I was just wondering, like some of the select elements, like for states,
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that if I hit like O twice, it goes to Ohio and then Oklahoma.
Right, because what it's doing is it says Oklahoma, or O will bring you to the first O. And if you go to M, it's going to go to Maine, and then you hit M, you can go to Minnesota or Michigan or whatever. And it's because what it does is the second time you click it, it goes to the next one in that first letter. It doesn't read that second letter of that array. Does that make sense? Or I should say of that string. The form object represents a form on a web page, and okay, sorry, I saw your hand go up and you were scratching your head. It represents a form on a web page, and you can use it to validate or verify information. It's part of the browser's object model. To reference form and form elements, your document object that you're going to have when you do document.write and things, anytime you're in there, your document element, it'll be forms, and in bracket, you put your identifier in there. Like we had company_info, it would be forms, bracket, company_info, close bracket. That make sense? Y'all with me? Or if you're looking for an element, a specific element in that array, you can do it that way. I'm not going to go through those tables. The empty input element generates inputs to where a user can input data if they need to. Text boxes, radio buttons, they don't have anything. They're null value by default until a user takes an action on them. Does that make sense? So until Anthony opens his mouth and says, here's what we're going to do, nothing happens. The checked attribute is a Boolean. Is it checked or unchecked? Right? Select box, radio button, true or false. Okay? So if you're putting this into a database, you would have it as a true-false field or a yes-no field. Okay? And then right here, if you're doing the checkbox, your type is going to be a checkbox. And then if you put in here checked, it'll have a check in it. If you leave blank, it is not checked. I'm not going to worry about those. If you have a an input field where you're asking the user to input information with a radio or a checkbox or an input field, you can have other methods called blur, click, focus, or select. Okay, to do multiple different things. Those are some of your attributes that you can use. Text box. Basically all it is just text. What kind of text are you going to put in there? The value attribute basically gives you that default value like I was talking about with the month, day, year information. Do what?
No, sorry, that was my phone. Please continue.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. A form with the text box that would be name, value, and size. Okay. A size being how big your columns and rows are. Or, I'm sorry, this is just a text box. So your text box, how many characters long? Is it going to be 2? Is it going to be 10? Is it going to be 50? Is it going to be 255? Okay. Each one of those are text boxes with inputs. Y'all have done this in chapter 5, right? Y'all recognizing this now? Is this kind of making sense a little bit to you? Form validation with the JavaScript. What you can do is you can add the text input elements from a subscription, like when you're doing validating an email address or whatever. And then you can do is NaN function. What that means is it a numerical value? And then you can add that function to validate that there's a valid zip code. You know, are you going to use letters for a zip code? No. Okay.
Is NaN actually checks to see if it's not a number, right? Isn't that what the NaN is? Not a number?
No, it determines if the user entered a numeric value. So it could be. No, I'm trying to remember.
It's kind of backwards, though, because
No, I'm thinking you're right because
if you enter a number,
if you enter a number, then
returns
it's wrong
false.
in the text box. That's right. It could be. And then is AN would be the other one. Yeah. Input validation with it. If you put a type as a password, it will automatically give you these asterisks over it, or bullets. And how many of you have gone to like the CAPTCHA stuff, and it says that if you click this checkbox, you can see it in clear what you're typing? That's just a sub JavaScript underneath this password. That's all it is. Push button is what you get, that submit, that reset, that cancel. Those are what we call push buttons. Does that make sense? Use name and value attributes with the push button. So if you give it a value, that's where you would see submit, on click, whatever, next. Whatever you see written in there is the value of it. And then the name of it is obviously the ID of it. And then you can have a, there's part of it. Okay. The type would be a generic button, but if you use submit or reset, you can use the reset type, and it'll give you a reset button. You use submit, it gives you a submit button. It'll submit that form to wherever you had that action to go to. Does that make sense? Did I lose anyone right there? Raise your hand if you're lost. Okay, I highly doubt it. Raise your hand if you're lost. Okay, the input type where you see button, all right, it's just like your submit button that you have on the bottom of web forms. The only difference between a submit and reset button versus just this button is just a generic button that you can name it whatever you want. You would ID it as button. If you wanted a submit button so that it submits whatever your web form is, you would type submit here. And then just type out the element name or give it the value of submit, and then it would submit up to whatever that post or that action is, and that's what goes there. And reset would do the same thing. It would reset that form. Those are, so you have essentially 3 different button types if you want. Does that make sense? And then you have this, and right here they did this on a on window. So you got the pop up that you when you say click here, you click it and it opens up this window and pops up a box and says you've opened it up. Yeah, that's really all it did. But anyone lost now? In this instance, if you put submit button, it wouldn't have done anything because there's nothing to submit. It's not a web form. Radio buttons. Basically, they're a group of radio buttons or option buttons. And radio buttons are your circular ones that end up with a green or guess whatever color you want to assign it. The user can select only one value. But if you put them, it says one value. But if you put it in like a table row, like if you're doing a scale from 0 to 10, as long as it's in that row, no matter what column it's in, it'll allow you to select anywhere in that row. Does it make sense? Everyone understands between the rows and the columns, right? Or you can just have a generic one like this. If you have multiple format elements sharing the same name, the JavaScript can carry out the array to do it for you. Like if you have radio buttons that share the same name, a value pair can be sent to the server-side script to function. The checked property, and if it's ever checked, it's always going to be true. If it's unchecked, it's false. Just remember that.
So you can use checked with radio buttons?
That's the value of it. If once you check it, it becomes true. It's false by default, unless you've already pre-selected one.
Right.
Usually, if I have radio buttons, I put it as none of the above as my auto select, or I leave it as blank, so none of them are selected. So that until you take an action on that in that area, then it's not going to do anything. Your checkbox is a type of a checkbox. Basically, it's yes or no. Yes if it's checked. No if it's not. So no, if you have a radio button, you have a true, false, or a Boolean. If you're submitting it to a database. And checkboxes are yes nos. So you have the 2 different types there. So depending on the outcome of what you're really wanting to get the answer of, would depend on what type of device or element you want to use. And notice with checkbox you can have multiple answers. Do what?
No, I said that makes sense.
Just want to make sure no one's asking questions. Okay, the select element creates a selection list. Basically, how many am I going to, what type of, I have 10 rows of things that I'm going to count 1 to 10. And I've got a UL on either side of it. Or unnumbered list from one, and then I close out my unnumbered list, but I have an LI for line item for each one of the line items. And that's how you code it, is and then those are the option elements. Let's see if there's a code for it. Option elements basically specifies the option. Here's your 2 selection list. If you select this one, then you can have an option of this. I mean that gives you why you can have a dual. So, how many of y'all gone to like Dell's website to download drivers or HPs, and you select some printer, then it asks you what your operating system is, asks you whether it's 64 or 32-bit. You know, those are the options for each one of those select boxes, so they can narrow down what driver you need. That's how they do it. Now, I think that's a pretty easy website. Takes a lot of hassle out of it. All right, the select object has the options array. Come on, They're not a. I want to see.
DV 7000. V.
Oh, DV.
Yeah.
Maybe was it Dell? I'm just going to choose this one by default and see if it. Drivers. Okay. I select what operating system I have. And that usually it was before then you'd have multiple select. So I was going to see if it had go into the page source here. And they're running JavaScript. So they're doing a function right here to get what are they trying to get? Alright, here's a second script. Let's get down in here to where they're calling it. Okay, right here it's commented out if you had IE6 or IE7. All their junk up there. That's their header. Check for updates. Okay, right here. Select your operating system. Notice I have that option here. I have an option value of 4063 or 4132. You'll see that? That's how you do the select options. That makes sense? That you can actually see it on a live site. And what it does is this script, where does it go? Select. And then when it gets that option value and it's been selected, the script will run and go to wherever the source is that they have it to go to. There's some frequently asked questions on that page. But then it kicks it back up to one of the JavaScript scripts up top, and then it goes out and does to the page that it needs to go to. But anyway, that's where those options are and how it implements them. It's a lot of code for this one page, isn't it? Just for that. It's amazing. Okay. But you got to see the option value so that you can have multiple options to choose from on that drop down. And when you select that option, the action will take depending on the option's value. Make sense? Now, right here we can add more options to the selection by doing variable, by adding a variable name, creating the text, give it a value, and say whether it's selected or not. Put it in loops. This is actually the JavaScript version of it. Notice the other way was actually the HTML version when I was showing you on the Dell website. If you can remove an option from a selection list, you just send off that element's ID or from that array, and then do the remove function. Make sense? So if I wanted to delete items, let's say I had these, is that pruners and seeds? I could click pruners and then hit delete item, and then it would delete it because it goes and searches for that option and then deletes it. That's all it is. And if I add it, then you start seeing how you can make a more dynamic page by doing this. More fluid anyway, not quite dynamic. On submit, that is going to be the tag you would see that with the submit button. On submit, go to here. For the action, on submit, do this action, do this page, go to where. On reset would be when you have that reset button. You're going to use an if statement in the onset event handler so that you can specify the value of where it's going to go. Validating radio buttons. Use the checked property to determine whether the element or the group has been selected. Go through and see if any one of those options were selected, because if not, then you can put that red asterisk that annoys everyone, says you got to go and select something. How many times do y'all get caught in these web forms that do that stuff to you? I got caught in one web form the other day. It was an infinite loop.
Really?
Yeah. I filled out everything in the form, resubmitted it like 6 times. And so I called up the webmaster. I said, "What's going on?" And he goes, "We didn't get anything." I said, "No, Doug, your program's screwed up." And he goes, "What do you mean my program?" I said, "Your website." He goes, "Why?" And I told him what I did. He entered it and he goes, "Oh, really? This isn't working." I said, "Take out my name on the second field name when it was asking for another person." He took it out and it worked. It was trying to validate because the value was assigning itself, and then when you deleted it to put your name in there, it was losing its value, so it was showing that there was an invalid field even though you put data in there. It got screwed up somewhere in its code that it negated. It was doing the opposite of what it should have done. And so therefore, anytime someone had a second parent on this form, it wasn't authorizing the form. Yeah. It sounds like healthcare.gov, right? Oh, by the way, did y'all know that you can now, if you started your enrollment on healthcare.gov before the 31st, you now have until the 15th of April to continue your enrollment. It got moved again, officially today, or yesterday. Another website issue.
Yeah.
I'm loving it. It's not that hard to do, as y'all can see. Validating checkboxes. Basically, check to see if checked is anywhere in that range of identifiers or elements or whatever you want to call your tags, your input tags. Validating selection list. Test whether the selection list is selected index property has a value of -1. Because if it does, that means nothing has been selected. Because when you have that null field, remember element IDs on selected start with 0. Because selected or a selection list is an array. Array elements start with 0. So the only way to test it would be if a -1. Well, any negative number for that matter, but -1 would be the easiest. Is there any questions on forms? Forms are pretty straight up, aren't they?
Yeah.
Did I knock out or put y'all to sleep tonight?
Yeah.
You ready for another chapter? DJ's over here laughing like, sure. No, seriously, y'all ready for another chapter or y'all want to go to sleep? Really, and the crowd grows quiet. I'm giving y'all the option.
What are the next chapter exercises, Steve?
No, I'm going to bump them
You're bumping back.
because I want to make sure that I get through chapter 7 before we. Because we're only going to get through chapter 8 in the book, so I can get you the projects.
Okay. 4.
Yeah, because y'all have got a good understanding of how JavaScript interacts with HTML now, right?
Yeah.
Anyone not? Besides Trevor?
Yeah, so,
You still don't get it?
not really.
Okay. Anyone else? I mean, be honest with me.
I'm just doing what it says to do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, the only way to get it more is to just, I think that when you ask us to create our own, you give us what you want, and we have to create it from scratch, that will be the best way to learn more. You know,
Okay, so-
rather than just, a lot of times some of these exercises say, type this in, then type this in, then type this in, and then see what happens. So
So
the
you-
ones that ask us to figure out how to do it, you feel like you're learning a little bit more.
Okay, so y'all want to give you a little bit more of a advanced task by just saying, okay, design the page to do this.
Well, you better check with everybody else first.
I mean, I want to know, what is it that y'all want? Please, tell me. I want to make sure that you learn. I'm not here to waste your time, and I don't want to waste my time either.
Just help us when the book is, when it runs in, it's giving us bad data.
Yeah, this editor was smoking something.
The real life examples like you just did are pretty good too.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with you.
like actually getting into web pages.
Okay,
That's what I'm doing now, is looking, inspect element, F12 developer tool.
okay,
I'm just trying to understand it. I don't really get it.
okay.
Like maybe if you had a real life example that corresponded to what we were doing in the chapter, go out and look at this.
Okay.
Or find this maybe find this in the real life thing, kind of like you're saying, go and find a function that does this.
It's like
Like
the
I
other
look at
day.
really cool pages and like I bookmark them so I can go back and find out.
View source.
How they did what they did to make it look that cool.
Okay.
I don't know if it's HTML, if it's CSS, or.
It's probably a little bit of CSS, but also you have to have the basic HTML core. But a lot of the looks and the graphics are going to be your CSS style sheet. And the functionality, if whether you're connecting with databases or you're doing a lot of variable and if then kind of more programmatic stuff, would be based on JavaScript.
So interfacing with a backend server.
Now, a JavaScript is basically, in a nutshell, you've had Java before, correct?
Yes.
Okay. When you're using variable names, or you need to create a loop or a case statement, like for when we were doing this drop down here for the select options, okay? You need to come up with a case statement in case they choose this or this or this, go do this section, okay? Hang on for a second. I want to. Trying to remember if that was the way I did it or not. Yes, it was. I'm going to bring up the page that I did, what I was talking to y'all about earlier about the comments page, how I shot it out and had it over the 3 elements. This is an actual website that I'm the webmaster of. Now, it's a little chaotic with the code, so please forgive me. Okay.
Can you dim the lights up there?
Flip the first switch. Yeah. Is that better?
Can you control plus plus?
Is that a little bit better?
That's much better.
Okay. let me go to let me just see if I can't do this. No, that didn't help. Take off the images. I don't need that. I don't need that. I'm going to try to get this down to my flash drive real quick so it'll be easier to show y'all. Depending on how long it takes to copy it.
Can we,
But what I'm going to do while it's trying to copy, I'm going to try to open up some of these files for you
yeah,
so we can discuss them. But that way I can, next class, I'll have the entire website for you. I mean, it shouldn't take very long. Come on. All right, let's open up. There's contact. Okay. Contact. I'm going to move these to the desktop real quick. And I'm going to, here's what I've got. Now mind you, this is a little bit of a VB script, but the same idea applies. When you have that web form, I think that, let me edit this one. Okay. Here we have our web form right here, right? We have that on submit that we were talking about. When you have that submit button, it's going to have you to submit to your action, right? Here's my action. My action page is to that contact.asp that I was just showing you just a second ago. I'm posting my information that I'm gathering from these input tags. So is everyone with me so far? So the first thing I do is I ask for their name. So let me bring up the website just so you can kind of do the okay. Basically, simple field. I got the email, I have the name, the telephone, mobile, and comments. Okay, those 5 web forms. This is a text area. Then I have my 4 small, just input text box. I have my submit form and my reset form. When I click reset, it resets the form, clears it all off. Click submit, it will email them. Okay. So when right here, my TD, which is my columns, I'm doing my text. I have my email, identifying my text box as email. I have a text box called name, right? Then I did the same thing with telephone and mobile. Got telephone and got mobile for my tags. There for one. Okay. Add the comments. Now notice the difference between a text box or text, little small text box, and a text area. Text area is your memo field. Okay. That's when I said you do it by your rows and your columns. I have it 70 columns wide, 6 rows high. Then I gave it 2 types of inputs. I did the input to the submit. It is a submit type, and it will do submit form. Okay? This right here is what they see on that button that we just talked about. Same thing with reset. Reset type will reset the form. That's all this form does. So that, notice all my little include headers up here? That is because the rest of the code for this page is actually in different locations. And so I don't have, if I need to make a change for one, it's going to affect every page that I have. So I just do it this way. Instead of having to go to each single web page that I have to change it, I change it in one location and it goes throughout the entire website. I tell you what, would y'all like, starting next week, to build a page, me to show y'all how to build this kind of a website from scratch right here, instead of doing it with the book?
Yes, sir.
Would y'all like that a lot better?
That'd be a lot better.
Okay. No more book work. We will show you how to do this, and then I want you to implement it yourself. Okay?
You said this on the top, that affects all of them? Is
Yes.
that HTML or is that CSS or is that
No,
JavaScript?
well, this is an actual ASP page. Now, don't get confused. An ASP page is the same thing as an HTML page. It's an active server page, or you can run JSP, which is your Java server page, which means they have a lot more security vulnerabilities when you're running Java server pages. That's why I run ASP. ASP has a higher encryption, and you can put in .NET framework stuff into it. So that's why I do it with ASP. It's just a identifier between HTML or ASP. But if you're running ASP, you have to have the ASP engine running or service running on the server in which your IIS is running. Are you familiar with IIS or?
Internet.
I mean, to turn on ASP and understand how that goes. I mean, if you're not, I can show you all that next week as well. That's not a problem.
This isn't JavaScript though, right?
No, I coded it in VB, but it's basically the same thing. It's the programmatic functionality is what JavaScript I'm trying to get the point across to y'all.
Okay.
But I do have some JavaScripts in here. And they're up here in this header 8.asp. Let me bring up the header.asp. It's actually in my include. Which one did I say that was? It includes header.asp. So let me go back to here, go into my includes, and then look for header.asp. All this code right here is in my header. Instead of having to take all this code for each different page, all I have to do is edit it right here on this one set page. And see, I have my JavaScript right here. See all these JavaScripts? They're under my JavaScript folder. Scriptalicious, Lightbox, Prototype. Then I have a CSS style sheet. I have another style sheet. And then I have some other scripts down here. So there's a lot of JavaScript in here. But I mean, what we'll do is we'll come back and I'll base it off of this so y'all can kind of see side by side of how to do it. Does that make sense? And then what I'll do is I'll task you after whatever we cover on creating that web page that week. I'll have y'all go out and do it for homework. That make sense? And then doing it that way, I can actually include the PHP, and I can include Perl, CGIs. I can do a lot more because then we can actually implement those components into the site that we would create. Because those would be running on the server side, and we would do those on your VMs. Did I give you Windows 7 or did I give you all 2008?
Windows 7.
Okay, I'll put out some 2008 so that you can actually run IIS and do local host and have those, and then you can actually do the put Perl out there and stuff so that we can actually do them. So, is there any questions on that?
Sounds good.
Y'all like that?
Can you write that up? Because I'm not exactly, like, can you just put it in what we're gonna be doing on like the news feed or something?
Yeah.
D2L somewhere?
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be fine.
yeah. I'll do that here in just a few minutes then.
I have one question on
Sure.
your web form.
On my web form.
Yeah, can you pull that back up in the browser?
Was it this? No, that's not.
Looks like you've still got it open.
Yeah, it's right there. I don't even change load, but okay. Here's my web form.
No, not the code, the actual in the browser.
Oh, yeah,
Okay, so it says fields marked with an asterisk are required.
yeah,
The only thing required is email,
yeah. That's all they wanted required.
was it? Okay. I wasn't sure if this was like a feedback thing or.
Yeah, it's their comments. So if they wanted to get for this, since this is a photographer, if they wanted to book a setting or whatever, they can just do it. And then, so if you're going to submit a form, you have to have an email, some way for them to contact you.
Right.
And
but
so they wanted
it's
the
not
email.
required for them to write anything in the comments section.
No. You put an email address in there and submit it, then it would go through it. If you don't have a true or a valid email with a validator, then it won't go through.
Okay. But if the only thing you're required to send is an email address,
Yeah.
they're not gonna know what you want.
But they've got your contact, so they can send it back and say, "What did you need?" It's more of, if you need to contact me, send me an email. But most people are going to put a comment in there and say what they need. But I mean, there's all sorts of things. Like when I came down in here to do events, right here is all based off of a database. So when I click here and I click go, it pulls everything up from the database. And it goes and searches in a folder to pull up all their pictures.
Are you gonna teach us how to do that?
Yeah, I can teach you how to do that.
How
That's
to
easy.
pull from like, either make a database and then interface it to a website?
Yes.
Website?
This do web app, yeah.
Because then that seems like that'd be really useful and marketable in the job market.
You need to know how to do it.
So far, we haven't really been doing anything that would be useful in the job market.
So you're gonna help us tie it all together?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's- yeah.
I want to make you understand how to do web databases. That's why I need to go in there and put the 2K8 server on VM so that we can actually run an IIS, because it'll be on our local host in the virtual environment, because we don't have a server per se that we can actually do it live on.
Right.
But yeah, I'll teach y'all how to do all that, and because all this is doing right here where it says pulling this text information, and notice I cannot right click out here.
Why is that?
You can't view the page source on this at all.
Did you disable that somehow?
Yes. Why?
Everybody see this code.
Yeah,
I don't want anyone to see my code, for one, and number two, it's a security feature, because you can't right click on these pictures.
find out who
It tells you where it's at, which is, I need to change that. Someone's screwed up my code, because it tells you right down here on the bottom where exactly the full directory of where it's at. So I need to change that and hide it. But basically, all you could do is bring up the picture and like that. But I mean, this is not really all that fancy. It's pretty simple code. But everything you see up here, the event, where they took it, and on the date they took it, all pulls out of a database. The number of images counts with the file system object from Windows of all the number of files that is inside that directory or the folder in which all those pictures are. all these pictures you see here are all thumbnails, and then when you clicked on the picture and it expanded up, that was the actual JPEG size. So the reason I disabled the right click is so that if I come up here, I cannot right click, and you see now it works here. So when I right click it, it tells you it goes to the events page. So I got that one done. I just got to go back and figure the other one out. So there's no way that, and I've got it half and half. So if you try to print this, you're only going to get half of her picture.
But you can still do a snipping tool. Snipping tool.
Try it.
Well, you can
Because
try it.
no, I'm saying you can do it, but the quality is so low on here that if you try to print it out, you're only going to get a wallet.
Well, right, yeah, it's not, I mean, this is a photographer, sure.
And that's why I'm doing that security to protect that photographer's
Right.
rights.
Yeah,
Okay.
copyright.
If it was like Chesapeake, I probably wouldn't care about the right click and let them look at my view source. But still, I mean, that's
Picture with Beatles.
So
Now-
a couple of questions on that.
sure.
When you built that website, was that all from code, or did you start with a template?
No, I built it all hard code.
Okay.
How long did it take? you to
Now I used a couple JavaScripts like Lightbox, which comes from Scriptalicious, and one other one that they have that's all part of the jQuery tool set.
Okay.
So I borrowed those because they're open source JavaScripts. But other than that, I coded pretty much everything myself.
And on the, like the picture, when it displays on the website, when you blow it up to the
Uh-huh.
website, it's, nice, good resolution.
Uh-huh.
How do you take something crappy resolution and make it into that?
What do you mean?
Or, well, you said if you try to print it, it's so low resolution
Yeah.
that you're not going
Because
to.
when you go and you print this,
Mhm.
the screen resolution is really set to an 800 by 600 max. So you're either going to get a really blown, depending on how your computer's set up, you're either going to get a really blown up, you're going to be 32 pages of pixelated, or you're going to get something so small that, or if you try to blow it up with if you did a snippet and put it in Photoshop and you try to expand it, you're not going to get much more than a wallet. So she said she can deal with someone taking out wallets, but getting any, the 4x6s or 3x5s, that's where it starts costing her money. Because as soon as she puts them out there, she only leaves them out there for like 2 weeks for people to buy off of, because she doesn't want people to go in there and try to copy and steal. And so that's why I have those security mechanisms on there. But it took me a while to figure out all the security mechanisms of what we needed to code and how we needed to protect the data. But that's just one of the several sites that I've done.
Have they ever considered watermarks?
Yeah, but if you do a watermark on the thumbnail and the JPEG, you're not going to see anything on the thumbnail. That's the problem.
Well,
With her,
do it on the JPEG.
because when you send it through Photoshop, it builds them both together at the same time. When you do it as a batch file, otherwise you've got to resize each individual picture, and you're talking several hundred pictures. She had a wedding that she had almost 1,000 pictures on. She's not going to want to go do that. She wants to, she could put the watermark on the batch, but where in the picture are you going to set it to where some pictures the face will be higher and they can crop it out and still get the face, and some pictures will be on center. So there's not really good hit or miss. And there's also, if you did a Alt print screen on that one, I actually have a white or clear GIF file that's layered over the website. So all you're going to get is a clear GIF. So, I protected her that way. The only way you can really do it is to snip it. And I told her, there's nothing I can do about that. Microsoft put that in there. But for them to get a really good resolution, they're going to have to buy it from her.
Right, sure.
And then she'll give you one that's like 6,000 by 6,000 pixels wide. Do what, Andrea?
Couldn't you hypothetically just go into your cache and say you put a passive image and then
if you wanted to, but you're still only going to get a wallet size because the JPEG's pixel is only 600 DPI. And I did that intentionally. We scaled it down because instead of giving you the high-end DPI resolution, because this is about 1/10 of the resolution quality that she gets. Yes, John?
How long did it take you to make this website?
Oh, I've been messing with it about 3 years. It's consistent. I change it all the time.
But
But
it was
at first,
like
it
blank page to publishable operation.
well, what I do when I create a page, first thing I do is I create the outline template. I create the background, the theme, and then I break off in the headers. Here's going to be my meeting you header. This block, break them into my isolated things. Then I start adding sectional components. And so that's where I start. And then all I have to do is just copy and paste after I come up with that one template. And then basically all I'm looking at is that one center section of code. And I just copy the headers in to everything. The headers and the footers. So once I create that first theme, it really goes pretty quick.
So like an afternoon or?
Yeah, you can code websites like this in half a day to a day. Depending on, and of course, I've been doing this since 1993, so to me, an afternoon to a day.
Right, yeah.
For someone brand new, probably a couple weeks. Going out there to make sure you understand every single code and every single element and how to put things together.
There's a guy who did the one that there was a run they had with a glow run at Remington Park,
Uh-huh.
and down the bottom page has his portfolio of all the pages that he had done.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them animation and all this stuff, and it's got like a portfolio. Like I said, it's like all the stuff that he's worked on. And will we be able to put something like that together by the end of the semester? You think?
Yeah.
Or
Well, you'd have at least one site that we'll work on as a class, and then you can put I want you to put your own elements into it. Let's do it this way. Your site that you're going to create will be about you. Make it your personal resume, your bio, your history. Make sense?
yeah,
Let's do that.
Yeah.
So that everyone has their personal. I don't want you to get too personal with it,
Right.
obviously,
yeah.
but I want you to put.
If you look at like Natalie Del Conte or Natalie Morris now, she's got it's just like a bio page, like for jobs.
Mm-hmm.
She's not seen that for a while.
And then when you get it, you download it to. You can FTP it probably, or put it up on a Google. Websites are just text anyway, unless you put images in there. But if you've uploaded an image into it, then you're going to have. You'll already have it somewhere else probably, so you don't need to download it back. But you can take all the folder from that we'll have for your www root folder, and use that to show what you've done and accomplished in the class. And then what we'll do is for your final, I'll say you're going to create one in class, and I'm going to give you certain elements that I want on it, and y'all will create it.
What we've done in things so far,
Mm-hmm.
if we wanted to specify a color, it was very basic: red, green, blue.
Uh-huh. Like background color? Or?
Define custom colors?
Oh, yeah.
as well?
You can do it by hex. You can do it by RGB too. Just depends on which way you want to do it. And you can define those in a CSS, or you can just do it hard code straight on that one page. I like to do it with CSS because then I can just go to CSS, change it like that, and it changes the entire spectrum of the page.
So we're gonna learn CSS?
Yeah, I'll show you CSS. Got to make this a web programming class, right?
Well,
How many of y'all have had web programming before?
just started.
Probably the ones that are in software, multimedia. But how many of y'all have actually had the scripting part of it? Andrea is probably the only one. Melissa, have you had any scripting?
This is the first time. I've had Java before, but this is actually C, work with the web. So,
Andrea, have you done ASP? Or VB, or what scripting did you use?
I worked quite a bit recently.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I was going to show you real quick before I let you go. When I was saying when we do the post, it goes to that contact.asp. Here's the contact.asp. Here's the mail form. Here's the VB script that I was telling you about. I pulled in, I set my mail to my SMTP mailer, and I said, who is it coming from? Because you always need to say who they're coming from. I always like to say it's coming from themselves at no reply. Then I take off the email address, so where the from, I probably should have said the from name, but they wanted to know where they were getting the information from. The remote host actually is their mail relay at Profora.net. That is the mail server that you have to use for ASP. The recipients were their 2 email accounts. You can add multiple recipients if you want. The subject line was their web contact. In message text, I put in there their email address. I said email, and then I put in their form. Excuse me, we're in class.
Open the door and the pressure check.
Oh, okay. Name, put in their first name. These were the IDs. And then once I got everything put in that message body, if it was mail, then it was going to send mail. It kicks back on that web page. On this page, because this is contact.asp, so you'll still see the page, and it'll say, "Thank you, your config has been sent." Page will redirect in 10 seconds. It refreshes in 10 seconds back to the home, or it'll say mail send failure, and then it'll tell me what the error was.
Does that be like if they didn't put it in an appropriate email or something?
Yeah, or whatever happened. But anyway, that's pretty much how it happened. All right. Well, y'all have a
We're still talking.
yeah. I'll just do it later. Y'all have a wonderful evening.